Welcome back to the Sunny Sttampin Studio. In today's video I'm going to show you how to make this Christmas card with a little bit of a country feel to it. Why don't we get started? First thing you're going to need is a piece of Whisper White cardstock that is 3 inches by 4 inches. And I'm going to grab some Old Olive Classic ink and a piece of Sttampin sponge, and I'm just going to gently grip my paper in between my two hands and drag my sponge along the edges of the Whisper White cardstock. Now if you've seen me sponge before, when I put the piece of paper on the grid paper and rub my sponge, that gives a deeper sponging effect. It goes in further into the paper. In this case I just want a fairly light effect. So I'm now going to put this onto my grid paper and grab the imaging sheet from a Stamp-A-Majig and line it up where I want my greeting, and then I'm going to align my T-tool with it. I'm now going to ink up my greeting stamp, and the greeting stamp I'm using is a Christmas Wish, and it's from the Home for Christmas stamp set. And I'm going to stamp it onto the top right hand corner of my Whisper White cardstock in basic black classic ink. Once I've done that, I'm going to set that aside. You can now grab your 3 tree stamp, and this is from the Pattern Pines Hostess set that's in the Holiday Mini Catalog. I'm going to grab my plastic palette, some Old Olive Reinker, and some Frost White Shimmer Paint. Now I'm going to put a couple of drops of the Olive Reinker into my palette, and then I'm going to give my Frost White paint a really good shake. So now what I want to do is pour a few drops of the Frost White Shimmer Paint in there, and I'm just going to wipe the edge of my bottle with the paintbrush. And so I'm going to give that a good mix, and you can see there that beautiful green shimmery color. Now just so I don't waste any of my paint, I'm going to rub my paintbrush and clean it off a bit onto my sponge dauber. So I'm now going to grab some of this mixture with my sponge dauber, you can see like that, and I'm just going to start pouncing it onto my stamp. The technique that I just showed you here, mixing the shimmer paints, is one of the techniques I featured a couple of weeks ago on my blog, showing you how you can tint shimmer paints to get a beautiful frosted paints in any color of reinker that you own. And see how it goes pretty quickly inking up your stamp. So once your image is now all inked up like that, you can grab your Whisper White cardstock, and I'm just aligning it with my grid paper, and I am going to stamp my image. Now make sure you do hold on to your Whisper White cardstock when you pick that up, because otherwise, you probably heard as I pulled the stamp away, it's kind of sticky, and your Whisper White can go flying. So I just moved that aside, and I'm going to grab my Real Red card base. This is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. I have a piece of designer paper from the Merry Moments designer paper collection, and you'll notice when I flip it back over that I have already sponged the edges with some Old Olive Classic ink. Now I'm going to center this onto my Real Red card. Once again, I'm using my grid paper as a guideline because I cut this designer paper 1/2 inch smaller than the dimensions of the card. So the card base is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and this is 5 by 3 3/4. And there we go. I'm now going to take my image piece, which by this time is pretty close to dry, and I'm going to flip it over and put some snail adhesive on the back. There, now you can see it was still a little bit wet, so when you're doing this in real life, you're probably going to want to give it a few more minutes to dry. Because I didn't slide it on my cardstock as I was snailing it though, thankfully it didn't smear. So I'm now just going to center it along my card, and it's along the right edge of my card, and again I'm using my grid paper as a guide. I never stamp without my grid paper. I find that the ruler markings are absolutely invaluable for making sure your project is straight. I'm now going to grab a piece of old olive cardstock. This started out as a 1 inch by 4 1/4 inch strip. I scalloped to the edge using Stampin' Up's scallop edge punch, which you can see here. I then took a piece of 5 1/2 inch ribbon, wrapped it across, and then stuck it to the back. I'm now going to go ahead and put snail adhesive on the back of this piece, and I'm going to stick it onto my card. And I want it to slightly overlap the Whisper White cardstock. So I'm just taking a moment here to center my card on my grid paper. I'm actually going to move it forward just a little bit. I find for me in card making, this is always what seems to take the most time, is just making sure that everything is straight. There you go. Once you've done that, you're going to grab a 10-inch piece of the red grosgrain ribbon, and you're going to tie it in a bow. Now, I'm just going to tell you up front that I really am not good at bow tying, so no two bows I create ever seem to look alike, and I can never quite seem to get them to go in the direction I want. I've been practicing and practicing, but it doesn't always work out. Now it looks like, thankfully, today it went nice and smoothly. So I'm now going to grab my craft and paper scissors, and I'm going to trim my ribbon ends. Now, although these scissors are called craft and paper, I actually only use them for ribbon. They're extremely sharp. If you use them for paper, it will dull the blade a little bit, and you're not going to get as clean a cut on your ribbon. So I'm now going to grab some mini glue dots, and I've got a large old olive button. This is from Stampin' Up's Designer Buttons, the Playground collection. And I'm just going to place and stick it onto my card. Now you'll notice if you look at the buttons that it looks, whoops, it looks as though they're threaded. And what I did was just inserted a sliver of cardstock, and then you can see on the back, I've just kind of, I'm going to bring this up closer, I've folded the edges over and stuck them down to a mini glue dot. That's what I call my faux thread technique, and it is in another one of my videos. So I'm going to pick up the mini glue dot with that one and stick it to my card. So there you have it, a fun, country feeling Christmas card. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I look forward to stamping with you again.